You decide 2006. The debate over Proposition 87. Now, here's John Beard and Christine Devine.
Welcome to this half-hour special on Prop 87, the Alternative Energy Initiative, on next Tuesday's ballot.
In terms of dollars and cents, the fight over Proposition 87 has assumed epic proportions, with spending totaling more than $100 million, most of it on TV advertising. It's become the costliest initiative campaign in California history.
Yeah, no question about that. Prop 87 has 15 words in its title, but for short, we'll call it the Clean Alternative Energy Act, a proposed amendment to the California Constitution. It calls for a $4 billion tax on oil that comes out of the ground in California, money to develop new energy sources, to replace our dependence on oil in general and foreign oil in particular. Big guns supporting the proposition include former President Bill Clinton, his Vice President Al Gore, Hollywood celebrities like Jamie Lee Curtis, and film producer Stephen Bean, who has poured $40 million of his own money into the Yes campaign. The opposition is firing back, collecting over $60 million for its war chest and an all-out advertising blitz that makes a point of showing that many California newspapers are calling for a no vote, along with some taxpayer groups. Oil companies are the top contributors to the no campaign, Chevron Oil leading the way with $25 million.
According to the state legislative analyst, Prop 87 could be a two-edged sword in that it could cut two ways. On one hand, increasing the cost of oil production might have a negative impact on the economy. On the other, the analyst says the impact could be positive if new technologies succeed and substitutes are found for oil and gas. So what's the answer?
Well, we'll try and find out from our two teams of guests on opposite sides of the debate. First, Jamie Court, president of the Foundation for Taxpayer and Consumer Rights. He supports Prop 87. And Anita Mangels, spokesperson for the No on 87 campaign. Now, Mr. Court, how can the voters be sure that that $4 billion raised by Prop 87, everything goes as planned, will be well spent?
Well, it is $4 billion that is going to be spent by an agency that's subject to open meeting laws, subject to the Political Reform Act. You know, I've been fighting oil companies a long time to try to get cheaper gas in the state. I haven't seen any action from the legislature, and I believe the only way to get to a 25% reduction in petroleum use in this state in 10 years is if government does the job. And I don't think it's going to be easy. Government never does what it's supposed to do unless it's watched. But, for instance, we've been watching the Stem Cell Institute, and we've been watching the conflicts there. And the laws that apply to this new agency are far tougher than the laws that apply to that Stem Cell Institute.
You have a lot of celebrities on board for this one. You have Robert Redford here in California campaigning. You have President Clinton doing the commercials. Yet you have a lot of the newspapers who are saying no on this one. Their editorial pages saying it's not the right plan. Why is that?
It's because, in a nutshell, it's a $4 billion tax which will increase gas prices, increase our dependence on foreign oil, and give it to a new bureaucracy of political appointees who, contrary to what the proponents would like you to believe, have written into the initiative that they're exempt from all the laws that other state agencies who spend our tax dollars have to obey, exempt from public contracting laws, conflict of interest laws, competitive bidding laws, and no requirement that they produce any results whatsoever for those billions of tax dollars they get to spend.
There is an argument, though, that the cost would not be passed on to the consumer. Is that right?
Well, look, the law specifically says the cost can't be passed on. I just find it ironic because I fought Anita when she represented the Western States Petroleum Organization for the last 3 years, representing the oil companies that have paid $100 million to stop Prop 87. And the fact is, we fight for transparency and accountability in government. I represent a consumer group. This is an accountable and transparent agency. The money will be spent wisely. But more importantly, the Board of Equalization has the right under Supreme Court decisions in the text of this initiative to stop any increase in gas prices that would result because of this tax.
Nate, I want to ask you, every other major oil-producing state in the country already has an extraction tax, severance tax, whatever you want to call it. Why shouldn't California have one, too? And then why not use it to advance, make the air cleaner and to work on alternative fuels to save gasoline, all those things? What's wrong with that?
Well, first of all, other states have a severance tax. California does as well, although it's not as high as those of other states. However, those other states tax oil a lot less. California right now is actually among the top taxed oil-producing states in the country, and with the passage of Prop 87, if it makes it, it will become far and away the highest taxed oil-producing state in the country. And you take a look at other states, for example, Texas has a higher severance tax, no corporate income tax.
Right.
California has the second highest in the country. Alaska, higher severance tax, no sales tax, no personal income tax. So it's very misleading and cynical to try and get taxpayers to believe somehow that in California we're not paying enough taxes on oil. Anyone who fills up at the pump knows that we pay the third highest gas tax in the country. Moving along, though, even if you're not philosophically opposed to taxing any industry to pay for something like this, you should be really concerned, as are over 40 newspapers throughout the state and over 400 credible organizations, not oil-related, I might add, who have said, wait a minute, you can't take $4 billion and then throw it down a bureaucratic black hole with no accountability and no requirement that you produce results.
Okay, more on the Yes on 87 campaign when we come back. Right now we take a break and we'll talk about the advertising blitz surrounding the prop when we come back.
Group of guests, Anita Mangels, spokesperson for No on 87, and consumer advocate Jamie Court, who supports Prop 87. Jamie, I want to give you a chance to respond to what Anita said about Prop 87, this bureaucracy being exempt from all these regulations.
Well, look, I'm a consumer advocate. The Political Reform Act applies. The Bagley-Keene open meeting laws applies. It's just not true. What really troubles me, though, is we have oil companies spending $98 million against this initiative to say, hey, look, it's going to raise your gas prices. If gas prices were going to go up, and they could simply pass on the cost of this tax, they wouldn't be spending $100 million to stop it. They don't want to pay adequate taxation. They realize if we get alternative fuel on the market through development by this alternative agency, that we're going to use less and less petroleum. That's going to make them less and less money. That's why they're spending $100 million. If it was a wash, they wouldn't be spending this money to stop Prop 89.
Well, a lot of money going into the TV commercials. Let's take a look at some of those. It's pretty much dominated the campaign, with one editorial suggesting that we've been drowning in political quicksand. Here's a look at the Yes on 87 campaign.
The oil companies are making us pay. They made $78 billion last year, a $400 million payout for Exxon CEO. They pay billions in drilling fees to Alaska and Texas, but not to Californians. It's time for them to pay their fair share. Yes on 87. Make oil companies pay and make it illegal to pass the cost to us. Yes on 87 for cleaner energy.
You've answered some of the questions, Anita, about what the opponents have to say. My question for you is, this race right now is neck and neck. What do you think is going to happen at the election day?
Well, certainly the polling has shown that while it is close, the support for the proposition keeps going down. The more people learn about what's actually in it, which is important, you've got to read it.